Daxx Khan is going to present us right now with not 3 this week, right? You're going to go with 4. You're going to take the 4 fights that are going to kick off the junior middleweight Boxcino Tournament on ESPN, coming at us from Mohegan Sun. So why don't you start with those, man? Listen, I love the tournament. I know you do too. How do you think these fights are going to go?
This has got a pretty good schedule going this week. First up, Brandon Adams against Alex Perez. Adams is the guy that, I've been pretty vocal about last year and this year that, he's a hot prospect despite his lone loss to William Monroe Jr. at the finals in last year's middleweight Boxcino. Adams, little to no amateur experience. He's very raw, but we see him improving in every outing. His power at 160 was better than average, but at 154 he looks like a beast. This is only his 4th year as a pro, and why he really hasn't time to build much of a resume, he's been in with some good journeymen and fellow prospects. And he's the type of fighter at 154 pounds, Bill, that when he hits an opponent and hurts them, they seem to stay hurt. Across from him is a guy fans from the tri-state area know pretty well, Alex Perez. They call him the Brick City Bullet. Alex has been on a few Broadway boxing cards, and matter of fact, a couple of years ago, me and Alex Pierpoli sat and watched him ringside when he suffered his lone loss against Antonin DeCarry on the undercard of Edwin Rodriguez and Jason Velez. Perez, he's been fairly inactive the last couple of years. He only fought once in 2013, once in 2014. He does have the amateur experience over Brandon Adams, but despite the experience, Perez is not a guy that goes out there and he gives you any reason to worry. He has a very basic style. He has a lazy jab that he kind of just sticks out there, and there's not much behind it. He uses it more as a range finder, and occasionally, when he does throw it with any intentions, it's more of a flickering jab than anything that's going to pause you. It's nothing that's going to give Brandon Adams anything to worry about, because Adams is a pure come-forward fighter, and he throws punches with the intentions to hurt you, and he has a pretty good chin. So I'm going to have to say, with the increased power of Brandon Adams, I can't say increased power, but with the weight class, being more suitable for the type of power Brandon Adams has, he's going to walk right through Perez, and he's going to stop him somewhere around the mid-rounds. I don't even think this is going to be much of a competitive fight after the first 2.
Brandon Adams, when Alex and I were talking about this yesterday, I kind of think he's the favorite in this tournament, and I agree with you, and I agree with your complete assessment on that fight, because, Brandon Adams was a natural 154 when he fought in the middleweight tournament last year. He actually moved up, and, he did well. He made it all the way to the final, and the final against William Monroe was a close fight. It wasn't like a blowout fight. He's looked good in his first fight this year. I was ringside for that. And I think I agree with you. I think that Brandon Adams is going to do well in this tournament. I think he's going to get by Alex Perez, but I think he's going to do really well in the tournament. So you and I are on the same page with him. What's the next fight you want to talk about?
Just real quick, I think Brandon Adams looked good in all the fights last year, and he was the least experienced one in the tournament. And if I'm not mistaken, he's the least experienced in this year's tournament as well.
Yeah, but but I think you make a great point about the inactivity of Alex Perez, but Brandon Adams is the complete opposite. He fought a lot of times because of the tournament last year, and he's already fought once this year. So I don't know. I think that that lack of amateur background, I think he's kind of caught up with it in the pro ranks. I think, and I've noticed the change. Although he is kind of one-dimensional, he does go after you for the kill. But his defense is a little better, and he doesn't keep his hands up that much. But I noticed a little more movement from him, so I think he's improving, and I think he's going to be a tough out for this tournament.
Absolutely. Next up is Cleotis Pendaveras against Ricardo Pinell. Cleotis entering this fight off a loss to Derry Jean, and that was in May of 2013. Like Perez, Cleotis has been very inactive the last couple of years. Aside from Jean, the best fighter he's been in with so far is Mauricio Herrera, and that's a fight he lost by majority decision. Pendaveras is not really used to going in there, as a 154-pound fighter. He got a late start. He didn't, as for Pinell, he got a late start in the sport. He turned pro in 2012, exactly 3 days after his 27th birthday. He's a tall, lanky fighter. He likes to use his jab, but he gets caught on the ropes a lot. One thing I noticed with Pinnell is he thinks a lot when he's inside the ring. You know, he kind of stands there, not really sure on what he's going to do next. When I say he thinks a lot, I mean he's not a guy that, he's not the type of fighter that when he throws a punch, he follows it up with his combinations. They don't come natural. He has to say to himself, okay, I'm going to throw a jab, I'm going to throw a hook, and then I'm going to come in with the uppercut. You know, there's a difference between him and Cleotis. Now, on paper, Pinnell is the harder puncher, but he hasn't beaten anyone of note, and he hasn't lost anyone of note either. And despite the layoff, I think Pendervaris should outbox Pinnell, assuming the layoff hasn't affected him. Away from the ring, Cleotis has worked with some top names in the gym sparring, and while sparring, he does not. And while sparring doesn't always carry over from the gym into the ring, in this case, it's the key where the experience factor is in Cleotis' advantage, because if you're being in the gym during your layoff, there's no ring rust. So I think in this one, Pendervaris is going to defeat Pinnell by unanimous decision.
Yeah, all these fights, and that's what I like about these Boxcino tournament. Eric Botcher's the matchmaker, and they're all pretty even. I mean, after this first round, things come in, focus a little better. Meaning the first round of the tournament, but you going into this first round, you're like, it could be anybody's fight, And Pendervaris, you're right, the inactivity and sparring isn't the same. You know that, Dax. Because when you're sparring with somebody, especially if you're brought into someone else's camp, you're there to do a job. He might have been working on one thing, so his job isn't to do anything other than help that other fighter prepare. So there is going to be some ring rust in that one. So it'll be interesting to see.
Right, but if you're an experienced fighter already, and if he's taking that time off, a guy who has experience, behind him, especially some amateur experience, if they take a little bit of a layoff, but they're staying busy in the gym, they don't lose that muscle memory. Of course, you're being brought in there as a sparring partner, if that is indeed what he's been doing during this time. But, the advantage is, due to the experience, you don't lose your muscle memory, and due to the fact that, his opponent is a guy that's really not fluent, that's going to be to the advantage right there.
Yeah, no, you're right. What's the next one, man?
All right, my next one here, we have Stanislav Skorokin versus Michael Moore. This is a hard fight to decide on because there's really not a lot out there about either one. I have seen footage of both guys fighting. Moore, who now lives in Connecticut after moving from Cleveland, had a few fights at the Mohegan Sun already. He's undefeated. He has 6 knockouts, but, he believes a little too much in his power. If you ever see him talk or you've read interviews about him, he actually compares himself to a prime Mike Tyson. He even has KO King tattooed on his arms. There's nothing about his power or his record that, makes him the big puncher he claims to be. And his boxing skills are very limited. He has spent pretty much all of his career at middleweight. This is going to be his first fight at 154 pounds, I believe. So we don't know how that's going to affect him coming down in weight. As for Stanislav, he's a pretty decent boxer. He has more of a European jab, straight right hand, and or hooks, and he follows up with a hook. From the tape I've seen, his hook and his uppercut are his best weapons. This is a guy, though, who's very relaxed inside the ring, and one who has deceiving power. In any of his fights that I've watched, the punches he lands, they don't look like they hurt, but they put his opponents down. And, the speed that he possesses is also deceiving because he has that slow pace, like I stated, but then when he does let his hand go, he lets it go really hard, and he keeps that right hand up by his chin, almost like a young Vladimir Klitschko used to do. He always looking for that opening just to drop his guy. So based on the video I've seen of both fighters, Stan Naslov looks like the more confident guy. As for Moore, I think there's a kid right there, who's trying to make himself think he's better than what he is. The confidence is a big part of winning fights at this stage, especially when you're on a stage especially when you're in, a big setting like this where, everybody's watching and there's so much at stake. So I'm going to have to say that Stan Naslov wins this one by a wide unanimous decision, possibly a stoppage.
And Stanislav, you think, is going to...
Yeah, Stanislav. I think he's going to win this by a wide unanimous decision and possibly a stoppage. I wouldn't be surprised if a stoppage came.
What about the third and final fight of the, or I should say fourth and final fight of the Boxcino tournament?
All right, Vito Gasparian versus Simeon Hardy. Both these fighters have a weak resume, sort of, but, Vito has been in with a few better guys. You know, he's coming in off a loss for Jesse Vargas, and he has been in with Jamal Charlo. The Charlo fight was actually a pretty close one. Even though Charlo won by unanimous decision, he only won by 2 points on all three judges' scorecards. What I don't like about Vito is that he leaves himself open after he throws, and he carries his hands around his chest. You know, which is a big, a big mistake, and something that I think that Hardy will be able to capitalize on. You know, Hardy, being from Ghana, is one of those tough guys who just likes to get right in your face, and he likes to let everything go with bad intentions. He's fought some names, but, you know, his best win really is against Howard Eastman, and it was a very shot Howard Eastman. That was twice in 2012, and he wasn't able to get the war-tested veteran out of there due to lack of experience and quality opponents, you know, of where he lives. Last year, if you do remember, we have seen Simeon Hardy in action. He was on the Boxcino Tournament where Brandon Adams had fought Raymond Gattaca, and William Monroe beat Vitaly Klitschko. So Hardy is an undefeated fighter with more knockouts. Vito's been in better. Even his losses, he makes a good showing of himself. So I think Vito's going to win this one due to experience and better quality opposition, and he's going to win it by unanimous decision.
Great job as usual with that. And you know, what's your thoughts on this tournament? I know it's early, but do you have an early favorite? Who do you think's going to win?
My favorite of this tournament has to be Brandon Adams. You know, looking at these other guys, due to the layoffs that a lot of these guys have had, even though they're more experienced, you know, they've had some layoffs. Brandon Adams is a hungry fighter, and, you know, he's a young fighter with a good chin. We've seen that last year, and, you know, he can deal with a little bit of adversity. You know, and there's nothing about him that's shy when he gets inside that ring. He's willing to mix it up. You know, Willie Monroe Jr., yes, he beat him, but Willie Monroe certainly didn't really dominate him, in my opinion. Brandon Adams, and when you want to talk about the experience factor, I think we were all a little bit shocked at how easily he beat Daniel Edward last year. You know, this kid right here. You know, he's got a little bit better head movement. He's learned how to pace himself a little bit better, and not too many of these guys, I think, are really going to be able to weather his early storm, because he comes out those first 3 rounds like a man who's possessed. So right now he is my favorite in this tournament. Outside of him, I actually think that Vito Gasparian, either Vito Gasparian or Stanislav, is going to be, you know, in the finals.
Yeah, you think that's? I think that's the favorite for being in the final. Stanislav and Adams.
If you ever want to see how good he really is, if you can go on YouTube, look up his fight against Andre Abramenka, and, you know, there's a fight where you can see what I was talking about, on how some of his punches don't really look like they're too hard, but, you know, he puts his guys down, and then, you know, when he does unleash that straight right hand, it's like a whip, you know, and it hurts opponents.
Yeah. Well, listen, I can't wait for it. It's going to kick it off. Great job breaking down those fights, Dax, as usual.